Hello?
Hey, Phil, this is Dustin Wilmus from KMSU Radio. How you doing today?
Oh, Dustin, yes. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's great to be speaking with you.
Hey, man, it's great to hear you, too. Like I said, I was sitting here, and it was funny. I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I went, no, I have an interview to do. And then I started looking through my notes going, where am I supposed to call? Am I supposed to Skype? And then I thought, no, it's the one they're calling me. Yay. And I just got a phone call, and I answered it. And I actually was telling her, I said, sweetie, I might have to get off here. And then all of a sudden, beep. So perfect timing. I was basically lining up my out to get out of the conversation when you called.
Excellent. Well, I won't keep you too long. I just had a few questions for you.
Sure.
Well, I got to say, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so I'm a fan of your work, of course. I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you got started in the business. What got you into it?
Got me started? Well, first thing, I started out, first of all, I was not one of these guys that was like dreaming of being in show business. I mean, what I'm doing is the biggest surprise in the world, I think, to me, than anybody else. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I went down to Daytona Beach, Florida to attend Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I was going to design computer stuff or be a programmer in the computer stuff with an aviation background, and that's what I thought I was going to be. When I finished school, I got a job working for AT&T in Orlando at the John Young Parkway Data Center, and one day AT&T went on strike. And I found myself on the picket line with my colleagues and coworkers, and we were having fun, meaning I was cutting up and making jokes and being all, crazy. And somebody said, man, we're having way too much fun to be unemployed. And so they said, yeah, you know what, man, you should go like this open mic night. They got this thing where amateurs can come up and start, doing, opening mic nights. And if they like you, they'll throw you a couple bucks. And I started doing stand-up, and that literally is how I got started. I mean, it was because AT&T went on strike that I took a chance and with time on my hands now and started doing open mic nights just because I had nothing to do all day and all night. And I did that for about 2 years. About 2 years I did stand-up. Eventually it got to the point where I quit my day job and got an agent who was sending me up in New York, and while I was up there, I was doing a show with the late, great Ken Ober, who used to be the host of a game show on MTV called Remote Control.
Sure.
And he was at a club, and I was at the club, and, we just had a conversation, and I was a big fan of the show. And asked him, I said, listen, I just want to put my resume in at MTV. And is there somebody you can, maybe give me a name? And he gave me a name, and he said he would let them know. And you know what? He was true to his word, because when I contacted that person, she said, yeah, Kenny said to be looking out for you. And I literally took my resume into MTV and, just had a quick, tiny little meeting with the person there. And just went on about my business. Went back to Florida after doing, my dates up in New York, and just kept on doing stand-up. The next thing I know, I'm living in Florida again, and like I said, that's when they started going through this thing of making Florida Hollywood East. So they built the Disney MGM studios, and then they were in the midst of building Universal Studios. And they weren't just going to be like rides and attractions. They were actually going to be working sound stages, shooting shows. And lo and behold, I got back to Florida just in time for MTV Spring Break. And they were bringing a bunch of their shows down. And what they decided on, this is a story I was told, what they decided on was, instead of bringing down all of their staff from New York and have to pay for travel, have to pay for housing, have to pay per diem, they decided, let's see how many local people we can find that, could fit in with our New York crew and work well with them and, have that same kind of work ethic. And then, that would be fewer people they'd have to, bring down from New York. And one of the things they were looking for was an audience warm-up guy. And I was doing stand-up, and just somebody said, there's this guy, he's really funny, he's been doing it for a while, he's a local, he lives here. And I got a phone, and then when they said my name, somebody's like, I remember that guy. He was in New York like 4 months ago. I had a meeting with him real quick. He worked with Ken Ober at a club, and that's one of those like weird kind of like stories like written out of a movie. But that's literally how I got into TV, from supposedly being a computer programmer for like aviation and tech dudes. That was my weird little journey.
Yeah, it's awesome that it worked out that way. And I got to assume working with MTV and being down there in Florida, eventually that's how you wound up working for Nickelodeon?
Yes, they, by that time, I'd gotten in good with MTV. And again, just doing one audience warm-up for that show. And it kind of springboarded into doing audience warm-up for a lot of shows. I mean, Florida, I was a big fish in a little pond. Television, the industry was new to to Orlando, I should say. And so when they had something coming down and they wanted to staff up really quick, they would just kind of go, who did you use on your thing? And so I was that guy that kind of bounced around from all of these different shows. But then when they said that Nickelodeon was moving down and they were going to be doing a whole lot of production, I just happened to be living there. But to get me to Nickelodeon, kind of different story. I was doing audience warm-up for Let's Make a Deal. It was before, way before Wayne Brady. They had brought it back as like a midsummer replacement sort of thing. They had a guy named Bob Hilton, and later he was joined by the original host, Monty Hall. And you know how they have the zonks on Let's Make a Deal. And they had one day when an elephant took a dump on the stage floor backstage. It was going to be a zonk prize or whatever. And all of a sudden the stage manager came out and said, "Hey, Phil, we need you to stretch because we got to clean up about 4 pounds of elephant turds back here." And so I'm in front of a live studio audience. I've already done my best bit. The show is almost over. This is about the time I normally wrap up my part of my job, And I had to stretch for like about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just improvising and just making up stuff. And when I was all done, the life-changing thing that got me to Nickelodeon was actually, again, the late, great Mr. Dick Clark, because he was the executive producer of the Let's Make a Deal show. It was a Dick Clark production. I had no idea that he was in the control room watching what was going on. I'd never met him, and he came out to thank the audience for their patience, because when you shoot a show at a theme park, they get the audience from the theme park. So, families pay $50, $100 to come into a park. And you take them away, and then you make them stay in a thing extra long. So he came down and thanked them because he really appreciated their patience and having fun. But then he turned to me and said, and I put a big hand. Normally, when something like this happens, it's a disaster. But I put a big hand for this young man right here. I've never had more fun in what potentially could have been a horrible situation. And he shook my hand and said, "You did great, kid," and walked away. And so I immediately went home. I called my agent. I said, "Look, Dick Clark shook my hand. I guess I did okay." He thanked me in front of everybody. "I want my own show." And she goes, "Really?" She goes, "I thought you weren't interested in doing like that kind of stuff. You just want to be, a stand-up comic. You want to be the next Steve Martin. You want to be the next Howie Mandel, the next Eddie Murphy." And I'm like, "No, I want a TV show." And she goes, "Well, it's funny because I was going to send you out on this audition, but it seems like you didn't want to do this. But Nickelodeon's moving all of their production down to Florida, and they're taking a look at people. And you want me to send you out for something?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "What? You want to be on a comedy, a sitcom? You want to be a host? What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Whatever you think fits." And so she sent me out on an audition for Nick Arcade. I didn't know what it was. I just, you go to an audition, and there's a bunch of people on one side of the table with a camera. And you stand on the other side on your mark. You've gotten your, 1 or 2 pages of dialogue, and you just kind of go through it. And I think the initial audition was just the opening of the show and like one little thing talking about the rules. I think it's before it officially became the 4 Ps. Before it became the points, puzzles, pop quizzes, and prizes. It was written differently, but it was like the original genesis of what eventually evolved into the rules. And that's all I did. I just kind of went out and was like, "Hi, welcome to the arcade, blah, 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 blah." And I just did that. And then you go home and you wait by the phone. And normally, in a normal situation, you do the initial audition, you go back for maybe 2 or 3 callbacks, and then you find out whether or not you got the gig or not. With callback is, when they're narrowing it down. They may be seeing, They may see 100 people, and then they call back 40, and then they take that and narrow it down again to another amount until they make a decision. Well, these people, they brought me back 7 times. It was the most agonizing thing. Like, it was the longest waiting process. Every time the phone would ring and I'd see on caller ID was my agent, and I'm picking it up, like, crossing my fingers, man, let it be yes. And she goes, Phil, yes, they want to see you again. I'm like, again. So that went on for like 7 times until, as they say, I got that one important phone call saying I got the gig.
Well, yeah, and as I mentioned, myself and so many other kids growing up around that time, you made an impact on them, of course. I got to ask you, was it tough working with kids on the show? Because some of them seemed, when you watch some of the clips back on YouTube, some of the kids didn't seem all that bright during the question segments. But
okay, two-pronged question here. I know you asked one, but that was really a 2-part question here. Did I ever have any problems working with them? Never, ever. As a matter of fact, I actually found out that's why that was one of the determining factors as to why they chose me over the other person, because it got down to just 2 people. I didn't know who the other guy was. I'd never met him. They brought us in for what they called a screen test. You know, they had finally built the set. You know, we'd already taken a look at the test run of footage, which I think it's funny. People keep finding this on YouTube, and everybody keeps sending it to me. Oh man, did you see that somebody else did the pilot of Nick Arcade? I'm like, okay, number one, every show has a test run, a pilot of sorts. Yes, I saw it because that was what they showed all of us when it got down to like about 10 people. The guy was a producer. It wasn't like they had another host. No, he's one of the producers, one of the guys that writing and produced the show. And he wanted to test out, you know, some stuff to see if it worked. So they shot him in front of it on the set of Get the Picture, actually, because the Nick Arcade set wasn't built yet. And then by the time they narrowed it down to like maybe the final 4, they showed us that so we could actually see an example sort of what the pacing of the show would be like. But man, oh man, the kids were great. They were just nervous. I mean, that's the thing that's kind of crazy about it. And that's one of the things that people say all the time when I go out and make appearances and stuff. Everybody talks about the kids, and I've had a little bit of fun at their expense, lovingly. But the thing that people don't quite realize, like when you were a little kid sitting at home and you're watching it on TV, you're just yelling at the TV, going, "Will you please just go to the right?" You know, or why would you wager only 10 points when the guy said he's an expert on Sonic? You know, it's like these things you're yelling at the screen. But if you were actually there, it's a whole different experience, being a kid on a game show. And it's even a little more, it's not bad, it's just a little more, it could be a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not disconcerting, just a little more jolting. It's a little more surreal than it would be even if you were an adult on a game show.
Sure.
Because an adult, you're a grown-up. You've got to, you reach a point of knowing how to handle yourself in certain situations. You've lived a little bit. You probably are living on your own. But as a kid, they bring you in, when they brought in the kids to test to be on Nick Arcade, they bring them in with a bunch of other kids. And they come in with their moms and dads or parents or whoever brings them in. And when they go into the room, they're being, escorted in and tested by other people who are like young interns at Nickelodeon, who are like barely over 20 themselves. So they still feel kind of young, and, they're still like, they're just 2 steps away from having just been in high school themselves. And so, it's like a really cool vibe. They're playing music. You're in a room full of video games with people your own age. And you're playing games, and the people that are in charge are not much older than you, and your parents are right there. It's a fun time. But if you get on the show, it's a different experience. Sure, you arrive at the studio with your parents, but they immediately separate you from your parents. Your parents go one place, and then you go with the producing people. And then they go and take you into a room that's your dressing room, and then tell you, take off those clothes and put on this shirt, put on these shoes, and then sit right here. And then they take you into another room with a makeup person. And although, maybe some 14, 15-year-old girls are dabbling in makeup. Some aren't. But almost every guy that came in wasn't used to going into a room and having someone put makeup on them, because even though it's like subtle, you still have to powder people down and you have to, make sure people aren't shining on camera. So that makes you feel a little uncomfortable if you're somebody that's not used to wearing makeup, especially having a stranger put it on you. And then you go into another room, which is the actual sound stage, which is ice cold, because when they turn on the lights, it gets super hot. And then there's a whole other stranger who's like running their hands, through your clothing to put a microphone on you and wire you up. And then they turn around and tell you there's an audience over there of like 400, 500 screaming kids. Oh, and by the way, act natural. I'm like, there's absolutely nothing natural about that situation, There's nothing natural about anything that I just said to a typical 14, 15-year-old. I know I never experienced that when I was 15. So by the time you are thrown out into the live studio situation, you're a little nervous. And then you're trying to play a game. You're trying to answer questions, and the lights are going, and there's cameras moving in front of you. That's another thing. When you watch the show on TV, just like when you watch any TV show, you're not supposed to see the cameras. But when you're actually there may be a camera guy right in front of your face, or something blocking or obstructing your view, or something that's right beside you that is a little distracting, a microphone hanging from the ceiling, whatever. All of those things are going on. There's people, with clipboards and headsets on, and they're talking, whispering to each other, and they're all like around you. All of this goes on to the taping of just about any TV show and any game show. And you're 15 years old, and you're thrown in the middle of this all of a sudden. So I think a lot of the times the kids would just take it out of their game a little bit, or out of their head a little bit, because, nerves kick in. And that's why I kind of attributed to a little bit of nerves.
Well, and those, the end segments there, when they go into the video zone, I guess it seems a bit primitive nowadays, but back then that was really kind of state-of-the-art sort of technology.
It really was. The technology was actually invented. I mean, Nick Arcade was doing stuff that had not been done before. I mean, green screen, of course, we've all seen that. That's, if you watch, even today, if you watch your local weather person, they're standing in front of a green screen, looking off at a monitor that you can't see. And so they see the projection behind them of, the temperatures or a shape of the state. They're able to point their hand and know where to stop it to go. There's a high-pressure system coming in here, because they're seeing themselves on the TV monitor, and they're seeing what we at home see. But in the studio, they're just standing in front of a blank green or blank blue screen. And the idea that putting the kids inside of a video game was the brainchild of James Bethea and Karim Metcalf, who created Nick Arcade. But not only did they invent the show, they invented the technology, which the way the video zone worked, the way you got interactive is they wrote a program. This is the inventive part. They wrote a program that tricked the computer into thinking that human beings were the equivalent of a computer mouse. So like when you move your mouse around and the little arrow moves around, and when you get it over to like the subscribe button and you click, and then by clicking, it causes the little arrow to press in, and boom, you activate something. That's because your hand is moving something around that you're seeing. But what if your body could act like the mouse? And when your body or your hand or your foot got into a certain area, like getting an arrow to a subscribe button, and then you put your hand in that area, it activated something. That was invented. It did not exist before Nick Arcade. And that's what made it so, crazy cool. But yeah, like you said, it's kind of funny because when people talk now, like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if like Nick Arcade was on now? And I kind of go, it would be great if there was a new game show on now, but Nick Arcade, I think you would probably be bored with it as an adult watching the show now. You're thinking about it through the nostalgia of your little kid's brain, right, as an adult. Because if you really think about it, man, oh man, just watching the weather person kind of jump around with like cheesy graphics, you would probably look at that now and go, I'm sorry, I watched Smaug come to life in Lord of the, in The Hobbit. This looks really cheesy, But I think like there's time for a new game show or something, which is one of the things I'm actually trying to get up and running right now, because the technology has made video gaming look so slick and so polished and so cool. But video zone thing, I think it's kind of cheesy now, but back then, state of the art.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, so many kids still nostalgic about that, especially now. People my age are really a resurgence kind of 90s and Nickelodeon in that time, and they have conventions and all this stuff. I mean, it's crazy that it's getting, to the point where a lot of people maybe not so impressed with Nickelodeon nowadays, kind of wanted to digress maybe in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to ask you a question, because this is a question that you made a statement that I hear all the time, and I know this is supposed to be an interview with me, but one of the things that I always wonder about is when people say, like, it's such a big part of my growing up, and it means a lot to me, and I always wonder, well, why? Because, there's a lot of shows on Nickelodeon, and what's amazing to me is what shows stick with these now adults, and what shows they remember with some fondness, but it doesn't have that, that was my jam. Like certain shows were like that, and certain shows weren't. What was it when you were a kid that you liked that now to this day you think back and have this cool fondness about the show?
Yeah, like you said, I think part of it is kind of looking through things, with a kid's brain, I guess, and remembering your childhood. Your energy on the show, I think, really set it apart from some of the other game shows that were on at that time. And I really like, too, that it kind of seemed like a big family in a way where, like Salute Your Shorts showed up on Nick Arcade or, maybe Wild and Crazy Kids.
Yeah.
You guys kind of went back and forth amongst the shows, yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of any other show that I can really remember that ever did a crossover episode. I'm thinking about all the different shows that were on. As a matter of fact, I was even on the pilot of the first episode of All That. And I don't think anybody else from any other Nickelodeon show ever appeared on any other show. So it was kind of, in a weird kind of way, now that I'm actually thinking about it and talking to you, I think I was like the only one that did sort of crossovers. We had the cast of Clarissa Explains It All on. We had the cast of Salute Your Shorts on. And then, like I said, I was actually on the pilot episode of All That. So it was really an amazing time. The 90s, Nickelodeon 90s was the best ever. And that's why I always tell, honestly, like bottom of my heart, no embellishment at all. 90s Nickelodeon fans and Nick Arcade fans are like the best on the planet, because you come from a time when that sort of television making at Nickelodeon was perfect. And so the people that come out now that are all grown up, they're coming from a place of like having seen near perfection, and that was a part of their everyday. So it is a really cool thing to have been a part of, man. I got to tell you.
Yeah, and I think it was just a simpler time without all the technology we have now, and just kind of more relaxed and maybe a simpler time, I guess.
Yeah. But, the thing, though, it was a simpler time, but it was a simpler time that was itching for something greater. And that's what I think it was. I mean, because if we wanted to go simple and keep it super simple, I don't think Nick Arcade would have been on. It wasn't just come on and play video games. It was like, let's make it an experience. Let's build a world. Let's put you inside of a game. We could have, because there was a show that was on before called Starcade, which, was a game show about video games. But at Nickelodeon, it was like, we don't just want to play games, man. We want to make you bond with the game. It was like, so even though it was a simpler time, it was a simpler time that said, let's reach for something that maybe isn't as simple. It was a simpler time, but they reached for things that were not as simple. They reached for things that were really, I mean, I hate this cliche, but I can't think of any better way to say it. They were really like thinking out of the box. I mean, even a show like Rugrats. I mean, I had the pleasure of meeting Arlene Klosky, who was one of the co-creators of Rugrats. And she said, if you think about any other time in which you saw babies depicted in animation, they were all cute. They had big, pretty eyes and they were whatever. But she said that if you ever have kids, which at the time I did, and she had kids, she said, if you really take a look at your child when it's first born, it looks like a little shriveled worm, and the heads are all kind of, you got to grow into the cuteness. When a baby is first born, a lot of them kind of look like they look kind of alien in a way, The color is not right yet, they're super pink, they're super purple, you can see the veins in them. It takes like maybe after a couple of days or 2 or 3 days, and then you go and look at your baby and go, okay, your skin color is coming in right. Oh, I can see your hair now. It's not all splattered down, or, some is starting to grow, and, I don't see the veins through your skin any longer. And she said the first thing she thought about every single one of her children when she was born was like, wow, you know what? Oh, babies, they do not come into this world looking really cute. So she grew the Rugrats to not be the cutest babies on the planet. That was out of the box thinking, because everybody else that ever did anything with babies in animation made them the most adorable looking, cutest kids ever. And Nickelodeon was open to those kind of like out of the box, fresh ideas.
Well, Phil, I know you kept busy after you left to Nickelodeon, and you mentioned maybe trying to get a new Nick Arcade up. Is there anything else maybe you're working on, or anything else we should look for?
Well, right now I'm actually just kind of focusing on that. I just finished I don't know how many city run of co-hosting the Let's Make a Deal live tour. It's the same people that do the TV show. So when you look at the TV, you see Wayne Brady and Jonathan. When you go to the live show, they try to get a couple people who you will recognize from TV to host those shows. They even do Price is Right. They do Family Feud. And we just wrapped. So when I came off of that, the very next project that I want to go to working on this new show that is called Battle Arcade. It's not, again, we're not trying to do like the Nick Arcade thing exactly, because we've all grown up. The tech has grown up. We've all grown up. If I put you on Nick Arcade, you would think, okay, this is cute and nostalgia, but after a while you would go, okay, this is a kiddie thing. This is really for people who love the whole aspect of Nick Arcade. They love the energy of me. They love the video game playing and the challenges, and want to have a chance to play like people play today. Because it's not only like a show where, you can just watch it. It's going to be something that not only will hopefully be on TV, but it will also be, streaming also. Kind of like a lot of shows do now, where you can watch, an episode of Big Bang Theory on like whatever night, Tuesday night, but then you can watch it on Hulu the next day. Sure. Our goal is to make something where you might be able to see it on Spike TV, and then you can then stream it on, Hulu the next day, or Netflix the next day. So we're trying to get Battle Arcade up and going, and I went from, we just wrapped the tour, the Let's Make a Deal live tour, and it was from one to the other. After the tour, after Battle Arcade, I'm spending my summer making appearances all around, like everywhere. I've got cons coming up. I've got a con coming up in Ohio, Super VidCon. I've got another one called, is it MegFest? It's a whole bunch. I'm not looking at my schedule right now, but I started doing appearances about a year and a half ago. All my other Nickelodeon colleagues were doing them, and they kept bugging me. Why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? And I was just kind of busy, producing TV shows for everybody. I was a producer at G4 for a while, and then I did some stuff for E! Entertainment, and then BET, and then I went on this Let's Make a Deal live tour. But it was actually because of making these appearances and hearing what the fans said, hearing how much people love the 90s, love Nick Arcade, and kept thinking, man, it would be great to see something like that again. People play games online, and there's lots of these really awesome sites like, Twitch and others that, have gaming on it. But the whole thing of that big, studio spectacle that intertwines and mixes with online gaming like we do now, that's what I'm going for with Battle Arcade. A bunch of grown-ups playing games like we did today. It's got the fever of Nick Arcade. It's got me from Nick Arcade. But we play games like we play games today. So that's kind of what I've got going on right now. And afterwards, it's back making appearances, hitting the cons and the gaming expos to meet all the fans out there that love those days.
Awesome. Well, again, Phil, I really appreciate you being so generous with your time today. And
yeah, sure. Listen, can I say one more thing before we go? Because right now, with respect to the Battle Arcade, I've got it as right now. It's not connected to a studio. It is an independent project I'm doing. So I've got a GoFundMe set up for it. So I kind of wanted to if I could, just kind of tell everybody, look, we're working to get this thing up. We're working with some gaming companies, and we're working with some other businesses to get this thing funded to make. We get the pilot made, we sell the show. that's how it is. So, it's GoFundMe, Battle Arcade. Just type in Battle Arcade in the GoFundMe and, help get the show made. I've got a great team of people from G4. I've got people working with me from Game Show Network. I've got people working with me who are like editors and producers from Netflix, all gamer heads, all love the 90s, Nick, and all know games. So, so if people can do that, it'd be awesome.
Excellent. Yeah, hopefully that gets off the ground, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, all the conventions appearances, the books, and everything being written, this is definitely the time for something like that to pop up.
Yeah.
Again, Phil, I'm a huge fan, and I really appreciate you taking the time out today.
Hey, thank you so much for giving me a call. Always a pleasure. Hook me up anytime, man. Anytime. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.